For too long, a syndicate that was recruited and structured to frame and flame the tricks of tribal politics in Lagos has operated unchallenged. Their pattern has been to trick the minds of the public, to embrace tribal hate and instigate chaos where the people are united. And they stage, in brutal fashion, a swampy attack on anyone who attempts to challenge their cult. One man who holds sway the annals of Lagos politics bankrolls and unleashes this syndicate at will whenever his ruinous political interest erects. Their assignment is simple: deflate the profile of strongest opposition candidates with tribal slurs and smear their candidacy to appear as anti-Yoruba agenda. That is why Engineer Williams, a devotee of Lagos elitist status, who served as a commissioner under Colonel Olagunsoye Oyinlola's military administration, and in his charge, most Lagos urban roads were built, suddenly became Oko Omo Igbo, who would yield Lagos treasury to Igbos. Olu Jimmy Kolawole Agbaje, Jimmy Agbaje for short, born to an Ikorodu royal elite family that is indigenous to Lagos, suddenly became a Jimmy Chukwu, who struck a deal to sell off Lagos to Igbos. And actually, people paid attention, believed, and ran with the falsehood they harbored in their minds. Prior to 2003, Lagos, as a true cosmopolitan state, was not tainted by the frailty and failings of tribal bigotry. It was either quiet or non-existent at the time. Tinubu, as a non-indigenous Lagosian, was fated beneficiary of Lagos urban elite politics. In 1999, he had a cruising win. Non-indigent communities pooled their voting strength to combine that of the indigenes of Lagos to give Tinubu a smash at the polls. Under the Alliance for Democracy, AD, he polled 841,000 votes against PDP's Dapo Sarumi's 184,000. He became governor and picked Ben Akabweze, an Anambra-born Igbo man, to compensate for the electoral support he got from Igbos in Lagos. But, as his nature is, he was setting the tone for tribal politics. In 2003, when Tinubu sought re-election, rhythm had changed. The emergence of Funsho Williams, a famed name with pedigree as PDP candidate, yoked with Tinubu's first tenure poor performance, and there was a real threat. The goodwill Tinubu enjoyed in 1999 had fizzled, and Funsho's profile, especially amongst the non-Yoruba community which Igbos dominated, was swelling and swirling. That, perhaps, was the first time the syndicate would operate their tribal politics. They were recruited to toss the tribal card to sway the weak-minded public and breed hate against Tinubu's strongest opposition. They harped on Funsho Williams' marriage to his Igbo wife, Hilda, and crafted a weird narrative that Funsho would sell off Lagos to Igbos, his in-laws. The slur was daft, but it spoiled many voters' perception. Funsho became a God forbid candidate to the Yoruba section of the electorate. But Tinubu, who is alleged to have escaped from Irabiji, Osun State, to settle in Lagos as a teenager, was hailed as real Lagosian who had a Yoruba agenda. The same narrative peaked in 2007 elections. Funsho was standing against Tinubu's anointed Fashola. The hired syndicate got to work again. But this time, their trick was stale. It was clear that Funsho was edging out Fashola in popularity and grace. Unsurprisingly, he was murdered at his Ikoyi residence. The 2015 elections saw a revamping of this campaign syndicate with huge arming and heavy financing. Tinubu had two political wars, pushing out Jonathan by installing Buhari and not losing Lagos by ensuring his peak emerged. So he doubled down on his strategies. The smear campaign syndicate was expanded beyond Lagos to touch national politics. Beggarly influencers, particularly Twitter, now X, were rented from around the country to add voices and vigor to the team. They were brutal and beastly. Strikingly, Most of them were fierce critics of Tinubu, never believed in him. To them, they are simply doing a job, even when they knew the damage it was causing to the nation. For instance, Dada Olusegun, one of the known names in the camp, once called Tinubu a herbalist, a ruiner of party democracy, and worse, evil. Omojua once heavily criticized the principles that Tinubu espoused. At the national level, they are insane and brutal in pushing and controlling hate speeches, fake news, and smear campaigns against Jonathan, who painfully took the fall. In the same breath, they charged their campaign against Jimmy Agbaje, who was the strongest opposition candidate to Tinubu's anointed Ambode. They painted him as a Jimmy Chukwu and a jinx tool through which Igbos intended to capture Lagos. Banners were produced and hung in public and marketplaces to press the lie into people's minds. To blast their intensity in Lagos, the traditional institution dashed and damned their revered throne and joined the campaigns. For instance, on the 6th of April 2015, the Oba of Lagos boasted that he'd throw Igbos into the lagoon if they failed to vote for Tinubu's anointed Ambode as governor in the election. In the election cycle of 2019, a resurgence of 2015 happened. Jimmy Agbaje was still the pitiable prey in the chopping block. These hired jobbers sponsored all sorts of tribal slurs and pitched the Yoruba voting community against Mr. Agbaje. The following year was the EndSARS movement. Lagosians, like other Nigerian youths across the country, defeated tribal hate and united in purpose. Again, these paid menace were called up to light the smoke of tribal division. They churned a narrative that pitched Igbos as working to destabilize Lagos, while the southeast was safe. Next, hired thugs were unleashed on peaceful #EndSARS protesters. Perhaps the 2002 to 2003 election season will be crowned the climax. This time, Tinubu himself was on the ballot. So the syndicate transformed into a sophisticated arm of national campaign. The likes of Bayo Ononuga, Femi Fani-Kayode led the online fold. The likes of Omojua, Ogbeni Dipo, Dada, Akin shaped their hate conversations. Offline, MC Oluomo and his thug team held town hall meetings to dish threats. Sanwo-Olu's special advisor led a protest in Lagos Island against Igbos, spreading the hate speech, "Igbos leave Lagos politics," save for the intervention of Obedience, who countered them with brutal facts and truths. They'd have enjoyed an easy ride as they did in 2015. Tinubu would go on to reward both Bayo and Dada for their competent efforts in steering the hate media campaigns, while the rest of the team were retained in the payroll. Peter Obi's defeat of Tinubu in Lagos and across the country struck a rude shock, and the fear of 2007 returned in Tinubu's camp in triple measure. GRV, regarded as Peter Obi's prodigy, was the strongest opposition to Sanwo-Olu in the Lagos governorship race. His reputation was fast and far towering. Cancelling his Yoruba-ness and instigate hate from the Yoruba voting bloc against him became the direst project. He must be reduced to a Chinedu who didn't belong in the Yoruba race, even though he hails from a famous family that is indigenous to Lagos. They ran with many petty narratives that GRV couldn't speak Yoruba, that GRV wouldn't promote the Yoruba agenda, that GRV hated Yoruba people. They charged the atmosphere and made it grind to what will become the bloodiest governorship election in Lagos history. On the election day, thugs were imported to parade all polling units across the state, and the violence they unleashed were never thought of. The elections are over, but these hired syndicates are still running rampage. A more recent being Lagospedia, who charged that Igbos be chased out of Lagos. They are steadily nursing the wounds of bigotry that they inflicted in the hearts of people. On the timelines of X, formerly Twitter, they consistently throw in cheap narratives to deflate serious national issues, and they are succeeding in distracting a majority. It's understandable that young Nigerians who are recruited into the syndicate to do these dirty jobs of fanning tribal bigotry and hate rhetorics do so out of desperation to feed and survive. However, they can't be allowed to do any more damage to our collective existence. Stopping them is an urgent patriotic duty. Thanks to Providence, there are well-meaning Nigerians, especially from the obedient camp, like Harry, who matches their strength and bluntness.
Frilife Media.